Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give it a few minutes for people to join in. So just go ahead and sit tight. All right, I think I see the participants kind of have leveled off at this point, so hopefully everyone has joined. Welcome everyone to our Explore the Coast Grants webinar. My name is Katya Biener. I am the California Sea Grant State Fellow in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am joined by Lexi Morrison, our project manager in the Central Coast, and Cherie Erickson, a project manager from the San Francisco Bay. And yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So this is a little overview of what to expect in our webinar today. We will give you an ETC program or overview, a little bit about priorities and funding. Then we'll talk about application and scoring, as well as we'll have a Q&A at the end. Just to note, there are a lot of folks here, so please stay muted unless you are asking a question. Cameras on are welcome. You guys are welcome to turn your cameras on. Just note that we are recording this, so you have agreed to be involved. If you do turn on your camera, keep that in mind. We also have a chat monitor. Erin will be our chat monitor to help answer any questions as we go along. She'll also be putting questions in, also be putting links in the chat, and we will address any questions regarding the application and anything else we've discussed during the webinar at the end in a Q&A format. The webinar, as I just said, will be recorded and posted on our webpage afterwards, so you can use that to reference. We also have an FAQ document on our website. This is based on the questions asked at last year's webinar, so please use this resource. You can definitely refer to that if you have any questions, see if they've already been answered on our website. And then closed captions are also available for this webinar. So to access that, you can click the three dots on the Teams control menu, click on language and speech, and then click on show live captions if you wish to access that. If you wish to access that. So now we can go ahead and talk about our grant program. And Erin has dropped the link to the application instructions in the chat. So you can go ahead and click that if you want to look at that. So we'll start with the purpose of the Explore the Coast program. California's ocean, coast, and beaches are spaces of joy, relaxation, and healing. The ability to experience the coast without fear of financial cost, physical barriers, or feelings of not belonging is crucial to how people cultivate their own lifelong connections with the coast. So that brings us to our priorities. To address this, we prioritize projects that provide enjoyable and healing experiences at the coast. Positive long-term impact. We want projects that inspire ongoing leadership and coastal stewardship. We want projects that connect groups that consistently face barriers by providing opportunities for community leadership. We want to serve the diverse population of California. And we also want to reduce economic and physical, operational, or societal barriers. So we have ETC priority communities. The State Coastal Conservancy's ETC program seeks to provide coastal experiences for people and communities who face challenges to accessing or enjoying the coast. Priority communities include, but are not limited to, lower income individuals and households, people with disabilities, people of color, immigrant communities, foster youth, among others. So now we'll talk about some example programs from prior grants. In this slide, we'll talk about some of the projects that we fund. So we like programs that bring people to the coast to play, learn to surf, kayak, sail, and other activities. We fund programs that are hands-on, highly interactive, immersive, and help build positive connections with the coast. We're looking for programs that not only help participants to overcome the barriers to coastal access one time, but that help reduce barriers in the long term by giving people the skills to feel safe and comfortable near the ocean, letting people see that others from their communities feel safe and comfortable near the ocean, or who look like them are at the beach, teaching folks how to get to the beach, and many other ways. We're also looking for programs with opportunities to build leadership and job skills. So on this slide, you'll see some examples of projects that we have funded. We'll start with the Noyo Center for Marine Science. This provides an outdoor marine science after-school program with whale watching, electric boat tours, and fun science activities. Then we have Mewater Surf and Ocean Outdoor Exploration Camps. This provides surf and ocean education camps to over 600 youth from low-income and impacted communities from the city of San Francisco. And lastly, we have Watsonville Wetlands Watch in the Our Pajaro River, Our Monterey Bay, Nuestro Rio Pajaro, Nuestra Bahia de Monterey program. And this provides kayaking and beach trips for the 192 participants and their families. So with these programs that we do fund, now let's talk about the type of programs that we don't fund. Projects that solely focus on classroom-based programs and curriculum, or outdoor activities that occur, or indoor activities that occur after the coastal trip. We don't fund construction of facilities with our ETC program. You can note that the Conservancy has funded hundreds of projects to build new trails, trailheads, and other amenities like beach stairways, bathrooms, overlooks, etc., through other funding programs. However, that's not what the ETC program specifically funds, but please contact us directly if you're pursuing that type of project. And then we also don't fund projects that are solely beach cleanups. And with that, we will talk about our specific 2025-2026 grant round. So we expect about $700,000 to be available for the 2026-2027 grant round, but we won't know for sure until the budget is approved next June. Of that, approximately $50,000 is available for participants to go to the San Francisco Bay shoreline. The remaining $650,000 must be used to bring participants to the outer coast. These grants have a maximum award of $100,000, so you can ask for anything up to $100,000. These projects will start in early July 2027, and they must finish by December 2028. So that gives you about 2 years to complete your project. Organizations with a current Explore the Coast grant cannot apply for funding that would overlap with their existing grant. This means that if you do have a current Explore the Coast grant, you are only eligible if your existing grant will be completed by June 1st of 2027. Applications are due Friday, January 30th, 2026 by 11:59 p.m. And selected proposals to be presented to the Conservancy Board for funding will be presented in the fall of 2026. So here are our typical grant agreement terms. Once the Conservancy has approved a grant at a public meeting, our staff will prepare a grant agreement setting forth the terms and conditions of the grant. The grantee must sign the grant agreement and comply with all of its conditions in order to receive the funds. Expenses incurred before the grant agreement with the Conservancy is executed cannot be billed to the grant. So just make sure if you are awarded the grant that you're not starting until you receive something from us explicitly telling you to start. Please note that the Conservancy reimburses grantees for expenses after they are incurred. This means that the grantee will have to cover the costs of the project between the time the expenses are incurred and the time that they get paid by the Conservancy. In some circumstances, grantees can receive grant funding in advance rather than being paid in arrears. Grantees are typically required to maintain general liability, automobile, and other forms of insurance during the term of the grant agreement. And all Conservancy grantees should expect to be audited by the state of California. It is the grantee's responsibility to maintain all necessary records to substantiate and document all payments made pursuant to a Conservancy grant. Basically, if you cannot provide adequate records when you are audited, you may be required to repay grant funds. And with that, I will pass it to Lexi to talk about the application.
Thank you, Katya. Now we will walk through the application. Our chat monitor will drop the link to the application page. Eligible applicants include public agencies, federally recognized tribes, and 501c3 nonprofits. Applications may be submitted by email. We prefer Word documents, but PDFs are also fine. If you don't have Microsoft Office or want to collaborate, you can use Google Docs and download your application as a PDF. So this is a cover page. On the cover page, we ask for your contact information. This is where you'll list your organization, contact person, title, and phone number. We also ask for your project information, such as your project name, requested funding amount, and start end dates. And then we ask if it's a new or existing program. So note that this is not whether you're a past ETC grantee. This is just if you've run the program before in the past. And then we ask for the location, and this is where you'll put the facilities or places you'll visit during the project. So you'll submit your application to grants@scc.california.gov by the evening of January 30th. For application prompts, we've added suggested paragraph ranges for guidance only, so feel free to write more or less as needed. And some questions include bullet points. For those, use brief, clear statements to answer them. If you are a current or past grantee, note that your project manager will not be one of your reviewers. And so assume that reviewers are unfamiliar with your project when you're writing your application. Next slide. So there are three main questions that help reviewers understand the project, and that's what, who, and how. The first question is what. So we want to know what the project is, what participants will be doing, explain clearly what the activities and trips will look like so the reviewer can clearly understand. The second question is who. So here you'll describe the ETC priority community and why the project serves the intended community. And then the last question is how. And so here you would explain any barriers and how the program will address them. Next, you'll estimate how many participants you expect to serve. This helps us understand how many will come from an ETC priority community. If you're unsure about whether your participants qualify, ask us during office hours or email us. And remember that at least 70% of participants should be from an ETC priority community. We'll go more into that in the next slide. So in the table, you'll estimate the number of unique participants from ETC priority communities and cite your data source. The application instructions include helpful tools for identifying the priority communities. And it's fine if totals exceed 100% when participants fall into multiple categories. So for example, if you're serving 100 low-income youth with disabilities, that would be 100 in each category, and it's still 100% of total priority communities. And then we have some sample tables available on the ETC site and in the application instructions, and the chat monitor will drop that link into the chat right now. So in this table, you'll fill in the number of estimated participants from each California region. Regions are shown on the last page of the application instructions for reference. So now let's move on to some of the questions. Note that each of the questions have a suggested 1 paragraph length. As we mentioned earlier, this is just a recommendation, so you can go over or under depending on how much you need to explain. So question 5 is participant outreach. This is how you'll recruit participants from ETC priority communities and ensure at least 70% are from the priority communities. And then question 6 is cultural inclusivity. This is where you'll describe how your program is inclusive of participants from diverse cultural and social backgrounds. And then we also would like, if you have any staff with experience or training that supports cultural inclusivity, we'd like to have that highlighted here as well. Question 7, ability inclusivity, asks applicants to describe how the program will serve people with physical, cognitive, or emotional disabilities. So note that even if your program isn't specifically designed for this group, explain whether someone with a disability would be able to participate or if their accommodations would be needed. Leaving this blank will lower your score, so be sure to address it. Question 8 asks you to describe the ways in which the program is designed to have long-term positive impacts on participants, including a sense of belonging at the coast. This can include participants learning new skills, leadership development, multiple year programs, family involvement, peer-to-peer mentorship, etc. Question 9 asks applicants to describe their relationship with the community that they aim to serve. Think about how your organization builds and fosters connections with the community served through partnerships and leadership roles for the community. For example, individuals from the communities being served by the project are involved in its management, development, or implementation. And now I will pass it on to Cherie.
Thanks, Lexi. Okay, so question 10 asks about the scope of the project. So this is articulated in the table here through 3 main parts, which is project management, project preparation, and project implementation. And the description column, you briefly describe each scope area. And then in the start and end date column, you'll insert the start and end date. Question 11 is the budget overview. So this was already mentioned, but our grants are reimbursement based, meaning you'll have to pay for any project related costs up front and submit your invoice to us for a grant disbursement. We also apply a 5% withholding to the final 5% of funds, and we'll release the withholding when the project is considered finished and your deliverables have been submitted. We're also allowing a percentage of the grant funds to be dispersed upfront if that's necessary for the grantee's fiscal operations. You'll want to discuss this option with your project manager if your project is selected. And applicants are now allowed to budget up to 20% of their grant total towards indirect costs. And please, whenever you're doing your budget, always round up to the nearest $100. For more information on allowable costs, please refer to our ETC allowable cost document, and the chat monitor will put that link in the chat for you now. Okay, so next up in the budget section are the budget tables. We offer 2 submission formats for your budget tables. The first is budget by task, and the second is budget by cost category. Regardless of what option you choose, you need to complete both the budget table and the budget narrative, which we'll explain in a second. So if you were to select the budget by task option, this format reflects what we use in the project work program and invoicing once a grant is approved. So this facilitates ease of invoicing for our team, and we strongly suggest that you use the 3 tasks that we have defined here: project management, project preparation, and project implementation. In the narrative, please break down the project implementation costs by labor, equipment, supplies, transportation, and others. And this is all included in the application as well, so you don't have to remember this. And we recognize that this may not be the way you usually create budgets, so we're offering the second way to budget for the application. You'll eventually have to use this task format, and staff can offer technical assistance with this once your grant is approved. So the second option is budget by cost category. This option is a bit more intuitive as you allocate cost by the type of expense, such as personnel, equipment, subcontractors, etc. So in the narrative, please estimate the percent of staff time spent on project management and preparation versus delivery of the programs or implementation. And under implementation, please summarize your anticipated costs for things like equipment and supplies and the costs of subcontractors. So here are some more budget questions. Question 12 is asking about the cost to participants. So it's asking things like, will the grant enable the program to be free or subsidized? Does the program offer subsidies or scholarships? And if it is offering that, how many participants will be selected? And then we have question 13 about other funding. We want to know what's the total cost of the program and do you have other funders? Matching funds and in-kind donations are not required by the Coastal Conservancy for you to receive funding from us, but this just helps us get an idea of the program as a whole, your program as a whole. Okay, and then the final question, question 14, is about applicant capacity. And we have this nice table here for you to fill in. So the first part, we want to know when your organization was established, just the year. And then we want to know how large your organization is. What's your number of staff? Are they paid or unpaid? Volunteers, stuff like that. We also want to know what are the staff's expertise and experience in administering grants of similar size and completing similar projects. So here you can answer in brief, concise bullet points, and we have this example included here. So you see executive director, 5 years of environmental program experience, received X dollars of grants in the past. And then we want to know, do you work with any partners in this project? And what are their roles? And again, we want this answer to be in brief bullet points. And lastly, has this project been implemented before? This is kind of going back to that question on the first page. Is this a new or existing project? So here we just want to know, have you implemented this project before? If so, how long has the project been running? And if it's new, have you ever implemented any similar projects? And again, a reminder, a project does not have to have received funding from Explore the Coast in the past to be considered an existing project. It just is asking, have you done this project before? All right, and now we'll move into scoring criteria. The scoring criteria serves as guidance on how projects will be evaluated. We recommend looking at the criteria to get an idea of what we're looking for and how each question is weighted and scored out of a total of 70 points. The scoring criteria can be found on our website in the application guide, and you can see the link that is dropped in the chat. And the scoring criteria should be on pages 8 and 9 of that guide. All right, and I think I'm handing it back over to Katya to close us out of this section.
Yeah, thanks, Shuri. So, as a resource to applicants, we are holding 2 Zoom sessions that we are referring to as application assistance to help with application assistance, budget questions, and project eligibility. So attendees can ask questions that will be answered in a group setting, and if time and availability allow, attendees can request to be moved in a breakout room for one-on-one questions. The first one is January 14th of 2026 from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And the second one is January 22nd of 2026 from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Registration is required to access the team link, and the chat monitor will drop the link to the Zoom registrations right now. And then we have some tips. So keep in mind, the paragraph count in the application is just a suggestion. So if you have a little bit less or a little bit more, don't feel like you need to follow it exactly. You will not be scored on how well you fit the paragraph count, but it is a suggestion. So if you can follow it, that's great. In past years, only 10 to 20% of projects have been funded. So just keep in mind, it's a really competitive program. Additionally, if you are a returning grantee, make sure to describe your project fully. I know Lexi already mentioned that, but those reading your applications may not be familiar with your project, so just make sure that you're explaining it as if whoever is reading it doesn't know what you're talking about. And lastly, contact us. We want to help. We want to make sure that we're getting the strongest projects out there and that everyone has all the help they need to fully articulate what their project will encompass, which brings us to our contact info. So you can email the Explore the Coast email, which is listed here, explorethecoast@scc.ca.gov, for questions, inquiries, and requests for consultations only. So note that this is for like application support, things about your application. And then when you're ready to actually submit your application, you'll submit that to a different email, which is grants@scc.ca.gov, which is listed on the application. Just make sure that you're emailing your questions and inquiries and consultation requests to this one and the application to the grants email. And then please include the ETC region of your project in this request so we can get you connected with the right person. And with that, we are available to stay a few minutes after to answer general questions. However, specific questions should be sent to our email or brought up during office hours. So I will open it up now.
While we're having people ask questions too, I just want to add, I know we're saying that the paragraph length is suggested, but this year we are also implementing a maximum page limit of 16 pages. So you can go over and under a little in each of the questions, but we're asking that the content of your application, so like the questions, not including cover page and the checklist, is 16-page maximum. So just keep that in mind as well.
Some staff have been answering questions in the chat, but I would invite you all now, if your question was missed, you might want to raise your hand and ask it verbally.
Okay, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, for specifics is, would lodging be included under the category transportation when you're putting in a budget? Or under fees? I could actually answer that one by email. That's not that important. Here's a big question, and I guess an opinion. Is it looked favorably upon if a project is extremely focused? We're going to apply for stays at a youth hostel on the coast. But one other option was saying the stays at the youth hostel and sea kayaking on a different day. Is it better, in your opinion, to keep it very focused to a single activity, or is that okay to be broader, which all obviously fall into the scope?
I can jump in for the lodging question, which is, yes, lodging is an eligible cost. You can list it under transportation. It'll have to be at the state rate though, so you should see the allowable cost document. It has more information on that.
Oh, and related to that, if we rent minivans, that would not be at the state rate, correct? That would just be the lump sum, correct?
For renting minivans, you can be reimbursed for the cost of the rental and gas.
Okay, cool. And if it's personal vehicles, it would have to be state rate. It can't just be gas reimbursement.
Yeah, personal vehicles would be the state rate for mileage.
Okay. And maybe the other question is too broad. That's a more opinion. Yeah.
I'd recommend for that one, email explorethecoast@scc.ca.gov and ask for a consultation because it sounds specific to your programming. And so
okay, that sounds good.
It may take more time to answer.
All right, thank you.
Matt, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I actually have a couple of them. I put it in the chat, but I don't think I've gotten to it yet. Do you look more favorably on the application if there are additional funding sources besides yourselves?
We don't really look at other funding sources that heavily. I would say, yeah, that's not in our scoring criteria. is how I
Okay.
will answer that question.
That's okay. That's fine. And then my second question is, with respect to the date, the start and end dates, that's part of the application. We work with public schools. We're a foundation that works with public schools, and we would be looking at events as part of the project, which wouldn't be taking place for, potentially another year or so, year and a half. So those dates would not be set yet, right? Probably not till next fall. So would it be reasonable for the start and end dates to put for the start date when the events would likely begin and then when the last one would conclude? Is that okay to do it that way?
I think that sounds reasonable, as long as it's within that window that it has in the guide of start and end date.
I
That's
mean,
fine.
it would be, because we would be talking about, multiple trips from different schools. So there's lots of different date sets. So yeah, I just wanted to find out if, beginning of the first, end of the last, as best as we can guess now would work.
Yeah, that is no problem.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Brenna, I think you're next.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Our team has had a couple of inquiries from educators and has really mulled over a creative fun project that they've been looking at for this program for quite some time. But we're looking at the guidelines in that all the indoor activities must occur before the outdoor activity in the grant. And I just wanted to raise, I realize it's probably not possible to, make changes in guidelines at this stage of the cycle, but just a consideration that could possibly be reformatted in the future such that, when groups are like ours are trying to respond to the requests of, say, schools or educators who are getting the youth groups together, that they may express the need to format that activity in a different way or a different schedule. So just wanted to raise that if it's possible at all to consider that the activity could happen after the outdoor trip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
Lexi, do you wanna-
this was something that was pointed out with our funding source, that it's actually a legal requirement for a funding source that we can't fund projects or programs that occur after the trips, but it's
Wow.
possible that we might get different funding sources in the future.
Okay,
So it's something that could change, but
Thank
it's something
you.
that we did have to include this year.
appreciate it.
Okay, I think we're on Sarah.
Hey, so we run a farm-based youth development and environmental education program. And part of that program involves off-farm visits to the coast. It's typically 3 to 5 trips to do things like kayaking, surfing, visiting the wetlands. And I'm wondering if we could request funding for the full breadth of our program, or would you expect to see only those 3 to 5 coastal field trips included in our requested budget?
It would have to be the coastal field trips. This program is pretty specific to activities promoting fun, joy, and healing on the outer coast of California.
And so that would probably include also like planning for those field trips as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thank you.
So just a follow-up question, if I may. So for the trips to the coast, which would be overnight trips, one of the typical expenses that we have for this kind of project or for program are covering the substitute costs for the schools involved because they have to hire a substitute teacher to cover the class that goes for those kids who don't attend. And I'm just wondering if that is an acceptable expense to put into the budget. I'm seeing
I
the
don't,
shaking of the
I don't
head.
believe that it would be. No, you can pay staff time for staff that is planning or going on the trips, but
Mhm.
that coverage would need to come out of a different fund source. I would invite you to look at the eligible cost document. Something you may be able to do is have our funds pay for something that you had budgeted other funds to go towards and free that up to pay for the substitute teachers.
So if we do that, then on the budget that we submit, do you want to see that that outside funding is going for that specific expense?
We only want to see what you'd be spending our grant funds on.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Kyle, if you have a question.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. So we are a sanitary district. We have wetlands on site, and we host field trips to those wetlands. So I was trying to figure out. I know you said that there was a limit, a 25% limit on. I think it's overhead or something like that. Would educator hours for a nonprofit that we work with be considered part of that?
So if the educator hours are going towards the wetland field trips, you can count that as not, that wouldn't be an indirect cost. That would be staff time.
Okay,
So that's
Great.
not included in that 20% of indirect costs.
great. Thank you so much.
Sylvia.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering what the eligibility of programs are for this, for Explore the Coast, that are operating in ocean connected bays. I believe the application said something about connecting the program to the coast.
Yeah, so as Lexi spoke to previously, our fund sources have changed over the years. Currently, our funding source requires that trips be to the outer coast. So the shores of bays, except for the San Francisco Bay, which has its own funding carve out, are likely to be ineligible, but I would ask for a consultation with a staff member and they can go over with you in more detail which locations you're thinking of and whether they may or may not be eligible for this funding source that we're awarding this round.
I'm going to jump in here because we can fund to estuaries, so saltwater bays, except there are funding restrictions on San Francisco Bay, and that's why it's called out separately. But for instance, San Diego Bay or Elkhorn Slough or things like that that are tidal, we can fund with the funding source.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish. Let's go to Matthew. Matthew, we are not hearing you if you are asking your question. Here, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. We'll go to the next person and then we'll come back to your question in the chat. We'll read it out loud. So let's go to David.
Hello, yeah, I was just wondering, does this grant fund projects that primarily focus on habitat restoration and environmental education? Were you able to hear me?
I can take that one. Habitat restoration, no. We have other fund sources for that. You could check our general grants page if that is a project that you're looking for funding for. Environmental education, it depends. Education, outdoor environmental education can be a component of your project, but note that we do have a joy and healing focus. So projects that are primarily just outdoor classroom lessons, and that's the only component of it, are not likely to be competitive under this fund.
Thank you.
All right. And then Matthew's question was, Would funding programming involved with museum learning fall under the classroom-based and eligibility? For example, would the grant not fund program days at a museum if the museum programming involves coastal exploration or something similar? I would say we get this kind of question often. I will say that we do fund programs that occasionally will go to like an aquarium or a natural history museum if they're along the coast, and that's just a portion of the program. So I think we would probably need to hear a little bit more about what exactly your project is. So I would reach out for a consultation, but no, you wouldn't immediately be ineligible, but I'll have somebody else from our team jump in and correct me if that doesn't sound right. Okay, then I think it sounded right. Great. We answered David's question. Sylvia, do you have another question? Oh, there are two Sylvias. That's fun. Okay, Sylvia Stomp, go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you. The other Sylvia. We have a program with sailboats that originate in San Francisco Bay, which is, of course, a safe harbor. The project we would propose involves bringing youth out to Drake's Bay, the Gulf of Farallones, Bodega, Half Moon Bay for 3 to 4 day voyages. So would the entire project be fundable because we start in the Bay, or would we need to break it out by region?
I'll jump in. I think we could, I mean, the whole project is fundable, but I think we could fund it under the one that's not restricted around San Francisco Bay, because the starting part would be transportation out to the outer coast part. We'd have to check with our lawyer, but that's what I think.
Okay, and the one thing I'd say is with the youth groups, we often anchor the first day in the Bay so they kind of get their sea legs, as opposed to take them right out into the ocean swell. But we can do that as well, but it kind of depends on the group and the weather.
You should briefly explain that in your application, because that's one where we'd have to get into the details with an attorney to really know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tatiana.
We are currently actually December is our final month with this grant, and our grant will be ending, and it has been incredibly successful for our communities that are in Riverside County, and we've taken people to the ocean that have never seen the ocean besides on a TV. It's been a really impactful program. The one thing I wanted to ask about is there is a part on the application that asks if you charge a fee. This round, we did not charge anything. It was 100% free. But what we ran into was based on registration, even with follow-up calls 2 and 3 days before to confirm, our rescission rate, well, it started at 50%. We have it down to about 40% now, and are concerned that one of the reasons that it's so easy for people to not come is because it's free. They're not out anything. So we were thinking when we apply for this round of charging a nominal fee per person, $5 or $10, just hoping if that will bring our percentages up on the day of the trip, so we don't have empty spots or as many empty spots. Does that ding us if we charge, or is it better to have it be totally free and maybe serve a few less people because they don't show up, or is a nominal rate wouldn't make us less approved of the application?
I'm gonna try to answer that with a statement, which is I have seen in other applications, I believe, the option, so people might charge that $5 to $10 pretty low cost, but also offer to waive that fee if there are financial hardships. So that could be something that you could consider as a way of maybe not 100% making people have that fee. So it could be free to some if they show they have a
And
financial hardship.
we do have a financial assistance program at our organization that anybody with hardship can apply for and receive funding. So we do also have a mechanism that if they have hardship, our company can pay that fee.
I think it's important. It would be important to explain that in that question on the application. I think it's like question 11 or
Okay.
12. One of the budget questions. Just explain that you have those mechanisms. If that is something that if you decide to go forward with charging that fee.
And there will be groups like our summer camp groups and things like that, we will not charge that fee to because we have them registered in the program already. But just when we do the family trips or we find that we get a high dropout rate. And we're not sure if that's the reason or not, but we wanted to try and test it. Anyway, thank you for the feedback. And we love this grant. It's such an amazing, it's some of the most popular programming at our Parks and Rec department. So thank you for offering this grant. It really enriches people's lives.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's go to Brenna.
Hi, thanks again. Just going over notes and kind of DMing some of our education staff as we get the information. So appreciate your help. But I wanted to just kind of ask for an example. We realized that the environmental ed that is sort of lesson-based, classroom-based needs to be de-emphasized. But I also wanted to go back to there was a recommendation in the beginning on leadership and job skills in regard to reducing long-term barriers and creating long-term impact. And we have, connections within those programs as well with our team. So I wanted to ask about the difference between de-emphasizing education or as it is classroom-based and integrating workforce development and leadership skills. If there's an example, I guess.
So one example is that within your program, you could have the opportunity for former participants to become trip leaders in the future. And that's a kind of skills training. It reconnects them back in with the program and provides a pathway. And that would be something that we would consider to be like a leadership opportunity or ongoing positive impacts. Not necessarily that's not necessarily like that they're doing education as part of the program. They're, but that there is that opportunity there.
Okay,
Does
so
that answer the
almost more
question?
of like a scouting model, if you will, kind of similar.
I'm not as familiar with what the scouting model would be. Brenna, you might want to do a consultation.
Certainly,
'Cause
yeah.
it seems like there's maybe
Yeah, we have
specifics
it.
here that would be helpful to answer the questions that you have.
Absolutely. We have a number of ideas. I just wanted to ask, kind of what leadership and workforce development looked like in Explore the Coast, so that we don't like sort of go off in a certain direction off the bat. Or if you have like maybe a sample project you could direct us to.
Yeah, I would say opportunity and support to perform successfully in those opportunities, less so than like training within the being what we're paying for.
Okay.
And I can jump in and provide maybe a specific example that might help understand. So one of our grantees is City Surf Project, and they offer surf camps to students, but there's also the option for those students to later progress into becoming an alumni surf instructor. And we also support that aspect of the program as well. So you see this transition of students from participating in the SURF program as a participant and then moving up into being an alumni SURF instructor. So they're actually being paid to run the program that they once participated in. So something like that is just one example of what that could look like as like leadership skills.
Right. Very, very similar to the scouting model. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Jesse.
Jesse, you're muted.
Hey, sorry about that. So I had asked this in the chat, but I missed the first 10 minutes of this grant, and I just wanted to kind of understand if this program, our nonprofit Move Santa Barbara County, focuses on bicycle education and pedestrian safety across the county. So would that still fall under coastal? The coastal requirement?
Jesse, I had responded in the chat, providing safety education and workshops around biking does not sound like an eligible Explore the Coast project to me. If the project were taking one of the, ETC priority communities that we've mentioned to do bike rides at the coast, that's more in line with the kinds of programs that this grant program funds.
Got it. That's really helpful. So we could create, because I was thinking about this too, we, in our elementary schools, we take the kids on private bike rides throughout the surrounding neighborhood. But instead, if we actually did field trips to the coast, to the beach along the bike path, that would be considered, and just focus our application on funding youth education, teaching kids on bikes and everything along the coast and along the beach, that would qualify.
It mostly sounds like it, but there's a joy and healing focus to our program. And so that should be a focus. And then also it's reducing barriers to access for people.
Yeah, that's literally what our organization is about, is accessibility and reducing those barriers. Okay, great. And then you said one last thing. Thank you so much for covering that. And one last thing is you said up to 50,000 or 100,000. What was the for funding for each program? I guess it varies across how much each program costs, but I'm just wondering, like, the general, like, if we applied for this and it was X amount, could we, and if it was only like 25,000 for the year, is that something, like, can we make specific funding asks, or are we trying to get to 50 or 100? Like, what's the fund?
Sherry, can you remind me what the max ask amount is for this round?
Yeah, so it's 100,000 per project, but we also currently only have 50,000 for trips in the San Francisco Bay. But you said Santa Barbara, so 100,000 is the maximum. And we say write the application for the project that you want to do. So if that project goes up to 100,000, then write that. But you aren't required to get up to that 100,000 at all. You could submit one for like $10,000 if that was what the project you wanted to do.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. All right, Abby.
Yeah, hi. I had put a question in the chat and then there was a nope right after it. So I just want to make sure the nope was not for my question. So we serve the young adult cancer population, and I was wondering if that's considered, first of all, a population that has disabilities, obviously, but it's also about reconnecting through the ocean experience and with nature, providing peer connection and also leadership team building. So I don't know if something like that is, aligned with what you guys are also looking at funding.
I'm going to defer that to my colleagues.
That sounds like an Explore the Coast project to me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, those are all the people that had their hand raised. If you put a question in the chat that was not answered, again, feel free to raise your hand and ask it here, or you can bump it up in the chat for us because it's kind of hard to see everything. Okay, another question. Would past partnerships with another organization that provided coastal experiences affect our chances of receiving this grant? I think if anything, that would probably help you to know that you have those relationships with organizations that have provided coastal experiences. Yeah, I think that would probably help you. Okay, and Matt asks, do you ever approve grant requests for less than the ask if the project is such that one or more components can be left out?
I can take that one, Cherie, if you want. Yeah, so what happens with the selection process is that if your application reaches the point of we would like to fund it, at that point, if there are if we're only able to give a partial award or there are components of your application that are not eligible for Explore the Coast funds, you will be contacted by somebody on the committee. And there's a we can work with you at that point to make sure that you're eligible, like on the budget for if there are things that are ineligible. But I would still encourage you to look at the allowable costs and read the RFP instructions and try to understand the eligible costs as much as possible so that you're including as much budget that can be approved as possible.
So Aaron, if I can just follow up on that then. So if, for example, if a project involves sending 4 schools to an outdoor overnight camp on the coast, 4 schools would be great, but 2 is still pretty good, right? So that would be an example of what I meant where, oh, okay, well, it would be roughly, let's say, half the cost, but, there's still some good being done. Is that part of the process that you look at when you go through?
Yes, that's the sort of thing. So if we're only able to offer you 50% of the ask amount, then we would go back to you and say, are you willing to accept an award at 50%? And what can you do? What's your revised scope? But that's a much later down the line problem.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
What Aaron said is correct. I will add, though, that we generally don't want to reduce people's asks, and we will instead fund fewer projects. So that's just the reality of it, rather than making people figure out how to do something with less. We just fund as many projects as we have money for.
Okay, Emmanuel.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I just had a question that I posted on the chat, and it was regarding our geographic location. So we're in the Southern Desert in Imperial County. We are approximately 2 hours away from our nearest beach in San Diego, probably. And just because of that, the fact of the matter is that our travel costs are going to be high. We're thinking, we would have to rent a charter bus or something like that to take students. And I'm sorry, I'm from the Imperial County Office of Education. But I was wondering, what is if the ultimate goal of your ASS program is to provide the most activities to the most number of participants? I mean, is that something that's heavily weighed on as you review the applications, or I mean, we just want to make sure that our application is actually something that's going to be competitive with others, right? So I don't know if you can share anything on that.
Yeah, so we see competitive projects that both maybe serve a lot of participants for a shorter amount of time, but we also see competitive projects that serve a lower number of participants, but they have a more robust experience. So I think both projects are competitive, and you should apply for the project that you want to implement the most. So if that is a project where you are serving a lower number of participants that are getting a higher quality experience, then you wouldn't immediately be considered less competitive just because you were serving a smaller group of participants. Does that answer your question?
It does. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So one follow-up question I saw that somebody made a comment that bus passes are not included, but I also looked and saw that car rental is. Can I assume that school bus transportation costs to get kids to the coast would be an included expense?
Yeah, that's included.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and to
so
clarify, yeah, go ahead, Lexi.
The main thing about the bus passes that we say are an eligible cost are bus passes that outlast the life of the grant. And so if it's like a year-long bus pass, or if it's a bus pass that is not just for the grant, but we can still fund bus tickets or chartered vans or buses that are just for the grant itself, if that makes sense.
And Sonia asks, how about BART or railway costs? And I think the same thing applies. As long as it is just within the period of the grant, we can fund that. Okay. Again, if your question, we're past 2 o'clock now, so raise your hand if you have a last minute question. But we are available to offer consultations to you all. If you have project specific questions, you can reach out to our email. Could somebody put that in the chat? Actually, that'd be great. So you can email us for a consultation request. And again, just include your region so we can do our best to pair you up with a project manager that is in your region and can understand your project as much as possible. And thank you all for joining. I don't have anything else to add. You all have anything to add? Oh, all right. This recording will be posted on our website, so feel free to refer back to it. There's also that FAQ document on our website from last year's webinar. So somebody might have asked a similar question that you might have, so check that out as well.